In the beginning, there was a dream. Las Cruces, New Mexico, established in 1849 when the United States took control of southern New Mexico following the Mexican-American War. By the 1920s, the city had grown from a sleepy little town to a bustling metropolis of just over 6,000 citizens. Enter C.T. Seal and B.G. Dine, two enterprising and very successful pharmacists who had a dream to create a premier movie house in Las Cruces. On the site of the old Hacker Hotel on Main Street, the two gentlemen began a new chapter in the history of Las Cruces and in the memories of countless area residents. Southwest architect Otto Thorman, whose work on the El Paso Free Public Library and Women's Club of El Paso was already very well known, was called upon to create the look of the new Rio Grande Theater in the Italian Renaissance Revival style popular in the day. Upon completion in 1926, the official announcement to the general public was made in the July 24th issue of the Las Cruces Citizen. A treat indeed is in store for those who have anxiously awaited the opening of this truly wonderful institution, which is a great credit to the Southwest, the builders who have had the foresight to visualize the future in their enterprise, and the operators for the confidence they have placed in the community in the manner they have equipped the theater. Replacing the old-style painted scenery, the stage is to be hung and decorated in a lavish manner with velvet drapes and curtains, as is the auditorium proper. The foyer and aisles are carpeted in a rich red, and the lighting is as modern as has yet been installed in even the larger theaters in the cities. A washed air cooling system maintains any desired temperature with its clean, pure air as distributed scientifically throughout the house. The scientifically designed washed air cooling system boasted of in the article was in fact a large evaporative cooler located under the stage. It employed a system of vents that ran underneath the floor and up through the walls. In a bit of psychological trickery, the walls featured real vents alongside artificial ones that were painted on to give the appearance of more washed air flowing in the space than there actually was. Still, the Rio Grande Theater quickly became known as the coolest spot in town. On July 29, 1926, the Rio Grande Theater opened with much pomp. The very first film shown was the silent classic, Mare Nostrum. Directed by rising star Rex Ingram and starring his wife, Alice Terry, Mare Nostrum told the powerful story of a female German spy who willingly sacrificed her life for her country. The opening was a huge success for the newly minted theater. In the July 31, 1926 issue of the Las Cruces Citizen, the reviews read,
W.L. Gullett, manager of the new Rio Grande Theater, got off to a good start Thursday night when he opened this fine new playhouse because the house was packed and the play was up to expectations and then some. It is needless to say that he will continue to have full houses, as it is Mr. Gullett's intention to bring only the best plays.
Then, in October of 1929, just 3 years later, the theater was purchased by Fox West Coast Theaters. The times were changing all across the country, and talkies were the newest trend. In an article published in the Las Cruces Observer on October 19, 1929, the following was revealed. A matter of great interest to Las Cruces theater goers is that tomorrow the Fox Rio Grande Theater, 1 block west of Church Street, will open up their sound projector system, which they have been busily installing for the past week or so. From the character of pictures with sound which have been booked for the coming weeks, it is quite apparent that Las Cruces is to have just as high-grade entertainment in that line as the largest cities in the country. Las Cruces is to be congratulated upon this fact, and it is comforting to know that with this beautiful playhouse and the installation of this most adequate and modern sound projecting system, which is the product of Western Electric and the best made, together with the management afforded by the great Fox West Coast Theater chain which now owns the Rio Grande, Las Cruces folks will not have to go to El Paso nor anywhere else to see and hear the best shows produced. Over the ensuing years, the Fox Rio Grande Theater was the place to see a movie.
I came to this theater when I was a young man. We used to come down here every Saturday. Sometimes we'd come in for a carton of Price's milk, just the carton itself. It was a fun place to come, you know. Everybody in Las Cruces would be here. Of course, Las Cruces wasn't that big, and we still fill up the theater here.
The period of the 1940s and early 50s was a period of musicals. And almost every Sunday there'd be a musical. Sometimes ones that were so popular that the line outside waiting to get into the theater would stretch past Penny's to the end of the block and all the way around it.
As the world of cinema became more sophisticated, the trend continued, with the Rio Grande Theater serving several generations of Las Cruces natives and remaining a social hub of activity for half a century. But the times were destined to change once again. In 1975, the Rio Grande Theater was sold to Video Independent Theaters Incorporated. Then in 1982 was resold to Allen Theaters, who turned it into a second-run theater.
Across the river, wash your sins away in the tide. It's quiet and peaceful on the...
By the mid-90s, the reality of multiplexes and high movie turnover had made theaters like the Rio Grande unprofitable. After 72 years, the old girl had fallen into disrepair and was badly in need of a facelift. Deemed untenable and out of date, the Rio Grande Theater closed its doors in the summer of 1997. But that was just the beginning. In the summer of 1998, the granddaughters of C.T. Seal, Jan Clute, and Carolyn Muggenberg decided to turn over ownership of their half of the theater to the Doña Ana Arts Council. Then Executive Director Heather Pollard received the phone call that would change the history of the Rio Grande Theater once again.
The phone call, that was an amazing call. It happened in the morning on a weekday, and I picked up my phone, which in those days we all answered the phones, and I picked up my phone, and it was Mickey Clute. And his wife, Jan, and her sister, Carolyn Muggenberg, owned the Rio Grande Theater building. I'm not sure I even knew that. And Mickey said, "Heather, what would you do if someone gave you the Rio Grande Theater?" And I said, "Well, I think I would probably just die of joy." And he said, "Well, Jan and I, along with her sister, would like to donate the theater to you." The thinking at the time was we'd get work groups in on the weekends, and we'd just paint and plaster and do a few cosmetic things. And as it turned out, it turned out to be a hugely ambitious program.
In the spring of 2004, after 6 years of lobbying by local arts advocates and legislators in Santa Fe, the renovation of the building and its transformation into a state-of-the-art performing arts center finally began. The Doña Ana Arts Council partnered with the city of Las Cruces to complete the renovation, deeding the building to the city in order to receive the legislative funding. Construction began in April of 2004 under the direction of architect Ron Nims of Studio D Architects, with D&D Contractors of Santa Teresa as the general contractors. It would eventually take 7 years and $2.2 million from private donations, federal, state, and county money for the Rio Grande Theater to reopen in September of 2005. The exterior of the front was uncovered first to reveal the bas-relief violins, branches, and trumpets, as well as floral rosettes. They quickly became the symbols of, as well as the motivation and inspiration for, the renovation process. A 40-foot fly system, a series of pulleys and counterweights that lower scenery, curtains, and light bars out of the fly loft and raise them back up and out of the way, was installed. The upstage wall is the original adobe back wall of the theater. The backstage dressing rooms, both upstairs and down, were added, as was the load-in door and sprinkler system. Our control room is now downstairs and houses our light board, soundboard, and digital projector. The auditorium originally had a center section and two side sections of seats separated by two aisles. The auditorium now seats 422, with 104 in the balcony. The new decor borrows heavily from the original design. A pleasant surprise was the discovery of the few remaining murals, which had been covered up sometime in the past and were later beautifully restored by local artist Alex Rosa. Color combinations of reds, yellows, and blues and gilded heraldic devices were recreated, all in the Spanish Baroque style. The ticket booth was recreated from the original drawings. A tin ceiling, not in the original design, but deemed appropriate by the current design team, was put into place. The sign was recreated to closely resemble the original, which had been demolished decades before. And finally, the front facade was reconstructed. The Rio Grande Theater opened with a grand celebration on September 16, 2005, with daytime and evening performances by local school and youth groups. The next day included tours of the theater with outside entertainment, craft booths, and children's activities. Saturday evening featured a gala celebration showcasing local performers of music, dance, and drama, culminating in an elegant sit-down dinner and dancing under the stars.
Everybody in town was here, and in fact, that day, there were long lines waiting to get into the theater. So the whole thing, it was one of the biggest happenings of Las Cruces, and now we can call the theater the jewel in the crown, and I believe it's always going to be the jewel in the crown of Main Street and the downtown revitalization.
The Rio Grande Theater was once again on the rise. In 2001, it was selected by the New Mexico Heritage Preservation Alliance as one of the most endangered historic places in the state. In 2004, it was placed on the State Register of Cultural Properties and the National Registry of Historic Places. Since then, it has won several significant cultural and community awards. It proudly stands as the only remaining two-story adobe theater in the country. Today, the Rio Grande Theater is a fully operational, state-of-the-art, 422-seat performance venue which has, over the last 5 years, played host to a long line of local, national, and even international acts. It is estimated that more than 60,000 people have attended the various events since the theater reopened. It is hoped that number will continue to increase as downtown Las Cruces continues its path to revitalization.